Namaskar, Annyeong Hasanika. This is Sonu Trivedi, Director of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Embassy of India, Seoul, with you all today at day 2 of the workshop on Facets of India-Republic of Korea partnership. Yesterday, we all witnessed the launch of the workshop by two distinguished speakers from India and Republic of Korea. That was the special address by Ambassador Oh Yong-ju, President of Institute of Foreign Affairs and National Security at the Korean National Diplomatic Academy, and the Vice Foreign Minister, Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India, Her Excellency Riva Ganguly Das, focusing on the synergies between Republic of Korea's New Southern Policy Plus and India's Act East policy in the Indo-Pacific region. Both the dignitaries identified complementarities and areas of cooperation between the two countries. Friends, today we are amidst you to discuss about the ongoing global pandemic, which I'm sure all of you would agree has forever changed our experiences as humans, as customers, as employees, as global citizens, and has become a lived reality and a new normal now. It has ushered a new era by which we look at the world, which has transformed the economy, politics, social, and our cultural lives all across the globe. It has spread and it has left national economies and businesses counting the costs as governments struggle with new variants and new lockdown measures to tackle the spread of virus. Despite the development of vaccines, many are still wondering what recovery would look like. The global COVID-19 pandemic has raised concerns about balancing the damaging effects of the economy and addressing the needs and rising aspirations of the common masses. The question we have today before us is to discuss about how to turn these massive challenges into meaningful opportunities. And to answer these and carry forward the discussion today, we have two very distinguished speakers in this panel from Republic of Korea and India, Mr. Choongjae, who is the Deputy President at Korea Institute for International Economic Policy, and Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, who is the Director General of RIS New Delhi, along with the presence of Her Excellency Shri Priya Ranganathan, Ambassador of India to Republic of Korea. We are also extremely privileged to have partnered with RIS and KIEP in organizing this very important session. With these words, let me call upon Ambassador Shri Priya Ranganathan for her welcome remarks. Over to you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Annyeong Hasanika, Namaste. My dear friend, Dr. Sachin Chaturvedi, the Director General of the RIS, Dr. Choongjae, the Deputy President of the KIEP, who is another very old friend of India and of the Indian Embassy, Dr. Sonu Trivedi, the Director of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center. I'm so delighted to be a part of this session, the second session in our for fortnight-long workshop on various facets of the India-ROK Special Strategic Partnership, in which we will be reflecting on the business perspective of the partnership in the aftermath of COVID-19. I think when in my 3+ years here in Seoul, in the Republic of Korea as the Indian ambassador, I have been able to see very clearly the centrality of trade and commerce to our relations. I think I would say really that there are two major pillars. One is the people-to-people contacts, and the other is the trade and economy. And that in turn has created the brilliant platform for the kind of close political and strategic relationship that we have built, certainly over the past 10 to 15 years. So I would say that in the kind of crisis situation that the global economy is faced with or has been faced with over the past year and a half, what India and Korea mean to each other, how they can help each other, how they can leverage their respective strengths to help each other come out faster from this pandemic is really the foremost question that I think about all the time. And I've been very pleased to find that the response from the Korean business community as well as the policy-making fraternity has been one of, yes, India is a partner with whom, on whom we need to count in order to propel the Korean economy as well out of this, out of the pall of the COVID-19 outbreak. And at the same time that the strengths of India and the strengths of Korea are such that they can, in a way, mesh very well together. And I see, for example, 2 days ago, when my Secretary East, Vice Foreign Minister, Ambassador Riva Ganguly Das was here, and we had some very interesting conversations with people in the Blue House, and the nature of the conversation included, I would say, some of the most topical issues that we are faced with today, and that is vaccine. How do we create a ecosystem for vaccine manufacture, which will stand us in good stead, not only for the COVID-19 pandemic, but for future pandemics, which I'm sure lie in wait for us down the road. Similarly, how can we, create more robust, less risky global supply chains so that businesses and manufacturing entities in both countries have a more predictable sources of supply in the future? How can India and ROK, how can the Indian strength in human resource plug into the needs of Korea Inc. in terms of skilled manpower, of technical manpower, especially in a situation where the Korean economy is faced with a very, very large looming challenge of demographic decline. I think these are the kind of areas in which I see a lot of synergy for us, and I hope very much that in the course of the conversation today we will be enriched by the insights and the thoughts and the ideas of both Dr. Cho and Dr. Chaturvedi. So with that, I will pass the mic back to Sonu, and hugely looking forward to the conversation ahead. Thank you both for accepting our invitation and for bringing your institutions on board to our workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your remarks and also outlining how important is the commercial and trade ties and how important it is for our special strategic partnership. Let us now hear to the views from our experts only. For this, may I now call upon Mr. Choongjae, who is the Deputy President and also was the Director of the Research Planning and Coordination Department at Korea Institute for International Economic Policy.
네, 안녕하십니까. 대외경제정책연구원 조충재입니다. 대단히 반갑습니다. 자, 먼저 제가 발표할 내용.
Thank you very much. So let me share my slides now. And I want to extend my gratitude to Her Excellency. And I've heard you are very active and you're very focused to the ties between two countries. So we have currently the COVID-19 situation and the US-China ties, and I've heard that you are doing many things. So it is very pleased to see you. And Professor Chaturvedi, nice to meet you again. Although I'm just seeing you online, I really hope I can have a chance to meet you in person in the future. So today, I believe I have about 20 minutes. So I will address the opportunities and challenge amidst of COVID-19 situation. So we have the continuing US-China confrontation, and then the coronavirus went to an outbreak. So we have new opportunities and new challenges. So I am showing you 4 times. Starting in 1990, when India started to open its market, and Korea led India's FDI. So India increased the scope of foreign investment and cut some ribbons. And Korea and India went to an agreement, and Daewoo, Samsung, LG, and Hyundai, the Korean chaebols, focused on vehicles to do a massive investment in India. So the scope of investment exceeded Japan very well. It was 25 years ago, from 1996 to 1998. So only for 3 years, Korea invested $640 million to India. Korea was 4th to US, UK, and Netherlands. And thanks to the massive investments, India was able to create a basis for manufacturing. So, and Indian market started to grow, and the export also started to grow during the 2000s. So, the Korean import from India increased as well. So in 2020, it was 300 million, and in 2007, it went up sevenfold. So at this time, the Korean investment to India also surged as well. And Indian investment to Korea surged as well. In 2004, we had Tata, and in 2010, we had Mahindra. So more than 420 million US dollars was invested from India to Korea. So this investment created a bridge in both ways. So that was in the 2000s. So we had very prosperous ties. And then we had the SEPA in 2010. When we look at 2011, the amount exceeded $20 billion. But after 2011, the increase was not there, especially the Korean import from India went down, and the Korean investment to India stayed at $300 billion. So that was the sluggish times. But starting 2017, there was a dramatic change. So in 2016, China retaliated against Korea's deployment of THAAD, and the Trump administration's containment of China began since 2017. So Korean investment to India surged again. It exceeded $500 billion in 2017, and it exceeded $1 billion a year after that. So the overall trade volume went up as well. In 2018, the amount was 21.5 billion in 2018. So after 2017, I put this that we had a new driver. When you look at the 2020, the Korea COVID-19 outbreak was on 2020. So when we look at 2019, in 2020, we had an 18.5% decrease, and the growth rate was minus 6.3%. When we look at the trade volume with Vietnam, the decrease was only 0.8%, while the trade amount with India, the decrease was more dramatic. But there were many other factors, and the global economy started to rebound. So the rebound of the trade with India is also greater. So when we look at the first half in 2021, as you can see, there's a 43.4% increase as well. So when we compare that to China, to Vietnam, 23.7%, 19.3%, that is more than twice the amount. Let's look at the investment. So after the COVID-19 outbreak in 2020, the Korean investment to India actually went up. There was a 38% increase compared to 2019. When we look at the world investment, China, Vietnam, you can see that it actually decreased. Like you saw the numbers: 14.3%, 41.4%. It's all in blue, all the decrease. But when you look at this year, actually, when you look at the year on year, it was a decrease. So it's $92 million, which is 63.3% decrease year on year. So when you look at China, there was a 16% increase, and the Vietnam only showed a 11% decrease. So that is a very, very low number, a very big decrease. In April this year, you're all aware, there was a second massive outbreak of COVID-19 in India. So the outlook in 2021 does not seem very prosperous. So we guess that the vaccination in India should be accelerated so that the Korean companies come up with more investment to India. So there are positive numbers as well. The economic cooperation is increasing much stronger. As you can see in the numbers, the investments passed already $2.6 billion, which derived from Modinomics and the new Southern policy. So these are all positive basis for that. So at this time, India have to pump the current situation more. The two governments have to do more to support this growth. So Japan is the largest ODA donor and the second largest investor of India. China is the largest trading partner and the biggest trading partner of India. When you look at Korea, the investment is only 14% of Japan, and the trade is only 19% compared to China. Most of all, we have to upgrade the Korea-India CEPA as soon as possible. We came up with certain packages, but the progress is not very fast as well. And the 10 billion financial package, we have to materialize this package and come up with measures. So at the independence talks, Prime Minister Modi talked about a $1.35 trillion investment. And given this situation, this 10 billion financial package, which dates back in 2015, it is very relentful that this has not been fulfilled yet. We have also further steps in the future, healthcare R&Ds, and this Korea-India Future Vision Strategy Group should be vamped as well. And fourth, so to all these packages to be fulfilled, we have to have ministerial level talks and summits each year continuously, and also that should be stable. So, like I mentioned, the confrontation between US and China gave us a new possibilities, and that continues again with the Biden government as well. So the Korean J-balls have a very large possibility to focus investment to India. So for example, Samsung Electronics, SK Innovation, Hyundai Motors, and LG. So all these Korean J-balls are investing $40 billion to US. That is about 77% of Korean foreign investment. And that is 3 times larger than Korean investment to India. So that, given that, the investment is now focusing to new drivers like electric cars and hydrogen fuels. So that might be disadvantages to latecomers like India. So the Indian government and Tata Group is now have interest in semiconductor development and manufacturing. So given the situation where the Korean foreign investment is focused on US, that might be disadvantages to India as well. So after Modinomics, the foreign investment situation in India is increasing very fastly. So China has an FDI more than 4%, and India showed an FDI increase of 14%. So India is world's number 3 of FDI. So US currently wants to draw more investments on manufacturing as well. And on this backdrop, India have to stabilize Korean investment to India, and we need more support from the two governments. Especially, India have to work more on FDI environment more than anything. So like I mentioned, we have uncompleted cooperation tasks from the summits. So these should be where our focus needs to be. So I already mentioned this. And I believe we have to have yearly summits. So only with that, we can address the uncompleted cooperation tasks and solve them faster than ever. Finally, I believe Her Excellency Ranganathan mentioned this. Given this COVID situation, many countries, including US, we have to have some vaccine deals with these countries, and we have to have more focus in vaccine development as well in the future. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Cho, for this very comprehensive presentation. In fact, you have strong ties that we have between the two countries in the commercial and trade field. And in fact, I'm sure all the participants would also agree how Republic of Korea has proved itself, and I'm sure people will believe in how this miracle on the Han River has been a reality now, from the transition from agri-based industries to full industrialization, and now focusing on the cutting edge technology. We have seen how Republic of Korea has made great transformation, and you have very aptly also summarized and also given some suggestions how some of the challenges, how these could be converted into opportunities. Maybe we will discuss them again further during the Q&A round. Let us now also hear the perspective from our Indian speaker, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, who is the Vice Chairman in the Atal Bihari Vajpayee Institute of Good Governance and Policy Analysis, Bhopal. He is also the ex officio Vice Chairman of Madhya Pradesh Rajya Niti Evam Yojana Ayog. Professor Chaturvedi is currently Director General at Research and Information System for Developing Countries at New Delhi. He works on issues related to development economics, involving development finance, SDGs, and South-South cooperation, apart from trade, investment, and innovation linkages, with special focus on WTO. He's also a member Board of Governors of Reserve Bank of India. He's on the editorial board of several journals, including the South Asian Economic Journal, IDS, and several of them. His book, The Logic of Sharing, Indian Approach to to South-South cooperation has been acclaimed internationally as one of the best volumes on international development cooperation. Over to you, Professor Chaturvedi.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Trivedi, for your very generous introduction. Thanks a lot, Ambassador Choongjae, Vice President of the KIEP, one institution with which RIS has been working, and both of us have an MOU to go forward to. I think we need to put more energy in this MOU. We go forward with our 75 years of independence and very intense partnership with South Korea. This series, I'm sure, is going to give new impetus to our partnership and take forward, as Professor Choongjae said, in terms of the partnership that we all are looking forward to, largely in context of our sort of challenges in the region and also globally. So friends, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, in my presentation today, I'm trying to explore the business perspective, the trade and investment perspective, the development perspective post-COVID. And this I'm trying to see more in terms of how we can take this forward at various levels. And that, I think, is important for all of us at the national or subnational level, at regional level, and of course at the global level. So what I'm trying to do is to see the post-COVID challenges, the kind of preparedness that India had in terms of tackling COVID-19, in terms of the challenges that industry took up with full support from government and partnership, and also India-Korea bilateral relations, how they have evolved, and the kind of future roadmap. So with these three sort of broad structure, I'm trying to bring in the point here as to how the development has actually been facilitated with several changes that we have gone through. So if you look at the preparedness, I think more than preparedness, it was the general policy shift that India has seen since 2014-15 onwards. And in last 6-7 years, many new things have happened, and some old have been strengthened, like, for instance, the idea of connecting mobile telephones with bank accounts, and bank accounts with biometric-based identity system, what was called as JAM Trinity. And the India stake that came in, I think, has played an important role in terms of bringing in payment gateways in India, also have tried to enable digitalization. So I was saying that the banks have cooperated, the government has done. Some numbers are on my screen in terms of how this has gone up. But the idea is that UPI, Bheem, RuPay cards, etc., they have enhanced India's non-cash retail transactions, something that we all had been looking forward to, and fortunately has gone up. The new plan that Ambassador Choongjae has come up in India is in terms of asset monetization. And that's where South Korean firms would find a huge market. And just last week, India's finance minister sort of revealed this plan to the public and to business to take advantage of how this digitalization has provided new fillip to the retail market. And South Korean firms have a huge market. And as I mentioned in another seminar the other day, the South Korean shows and our connect through the bands, I think at the cultural level, have provided a huge business scope, and that sets the stage for several digital payments between South Korea and India. And I think it's important for us to see how we are going to go forward with RTGS and NAFTA related transfers. And if you look at the direct benefit transfers, the government has tried to establish this, what started in 2013 14, and after that, in 2021, you have almost 1 billion Aadhaar cards. You have 1 billion mobile multiplied, and we have leveraged some of the earlier achievements to a great benefit, squeezing off any kind of leakages in the system, also taking care of corruption, and also trying to see how we reach out to people. So this also demonstrates government's willingness and commitment to reach out to individual citizens who are needing these direct benefit transfers, be that farmers or artisans, women groups across the country. Several self-help groups have come up and they are taking the innovation forward. If you look at the scenario during post-COVID phase as it is unfolding in various parts of the country, you find that instant money payment services have multiplied. And the fintech revolution is something where India and South Korea have huge potential to cooperate. It is one area where e-commerce policies of the government are going to be delivering that we are looking at. And a whooping amount is being transferred to these direct benefit transfers, which have also, in a way, enriched and laid out the roadmap for financial sector integration with new technologies and people's preferences in terms of how the shopping and the buying and the transfer of resources is being done. So it is one of the mega sort of challenges. Recently, Financial Times had this huge story in terms of how RBI and India's stake have, in a way, enhanced the ecosystem, how India is paying, and in what way digitalization during the COVID crisis has actually paved way for new forms of industrialization and new forms of partnership. Unfortunately, many other countries are taking advantage of this. Like, for instance, Japan has invested 3 times more in last 4 years. You also find Chinese companies trying to take advantage of this through several routes. The US investments have also gone up. They are almost double in last 5 years. But India's own commitment in terms of a self-reliant country, in terms of several sectoral partnerships, they are not foreclosing options for our interlinkages and our partnerships with other countries. So startup culture, digital India, these schemes that are there for healthcare, e-commerce, education, entertainment, they are the areas where South Korea-India partnership requires to be taken forward. In fact, if you look at the way India has moved its partnership with startups, you would find that 38 unicorns have come up with the investment of almost $12 billion, and India now is third after US and China. And this number is multiplying constantly. Among all these startups, you find something very common in terms of how the new technology is being leveraged. So I think KIEP and RIS can really do a joint exploration in terms of how this landscape is unfolding and how South Korea and India can actually take advantage of this scenario. Look at this Ambassador Choongjae. You would see that the total number of startups in India have gone up where seed capital is being used. So in 2019, when the pandemic was at its peak, we had almost 257 deals valuing $186 million, which in 2020 was no less. And in 2021, when we are only up to June, we are seeing a new energy and quantums have gone up. We are seeing this largely in terms of how new businesses are being created. So India was not producing PPE kits. India had no sort of oxygen concentrators. The number of firms were very limited, but you find the ventilators were limited. You find huge numbers, new energies, and new endeavors to take this forward. The numbers have gone up, and it's not just about health sector alone. It is also bringing in the new areas where the RT-PCR diagnostic kits and several dimensions have appeared. And this is one area Ambassador Choongjae, where we can really take this forward, not only in CLMV countries, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Vietnam, but also in some of the African countries. And that, I think, is some way the Asia-Africa growth connect, I think, is important. South Korea is already interested in Central Asia and in Africa, and I think it would be important for India and South Korea to partner and take this forward as we are trying to do that. For Africa, we have also opened up a new platform called CoWIN, where we are trying to lead the vaccine supply and vaccine a sort of equity that is needed in terms of COVID supply. And Prime Minister Modi has already announced India's commitment in terms of open sourcing of COVID on 5th of July. So we are trying to see how more energies can be sort of leveraged for flexible choices in terms of getting equity along with vaccine supply at the global level. And that's where our businesses, if they come together, they can really contribute in a major way as we look at even at small and medium enterprises, as I said in the beginning. In the COVID crisis in last 3 years, our Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has taken up several opportunities of supporting India's small and medium enterprises. Several new schemes have been announced. And I think if partnerships come up between our small enterprises and South Korea, apart from chaebols, has no dearth of these MSMEs. The whole success rests on chaebols, but they are also being very ably supported by small and medium enterprises, the ancillary units. And I think if you look at these 5 majors that I have listed in this slide, they are the ones which are providing the necessary ecosystem for growth of MSMEs, and they be that in terms of the emergency credit or funds of funds, the credit guarantee scheme, the enhancing domestic pool and higher budgetary allocation. Every way you find a larger sort of footprint in terms of going forward. Let me pick up the issues in India-Korea partnership, and I feel that there are areas where we can together work as India joins the Troika in a month's time with Italy and Indonesia. I think the magnificent contribution that South Korea made as chair of G20 by bringing in development pillar, the leadership at G20 back in 2010 and 11 when the development pillar was added. And I think it would be important for the new Southern policy and our Act East policy to see how some of these dimensions can create to development at the UN. And I think it's important for us to see that those opportunities come up for everyone. And I think the Korean New Deal with data dams, smart government, smart healthcare, green and smart schools probably is the way forward for us to bring in this new development space. But it would also be important, in my view, to see how multilateralism is very close to the principles and ethos of South-South cooperation. And I think that's where India and Korea would have to see the regional dynamics here, the role that India and South Korea together can play in terms of taking it forward. I think Ambassador Choongjae is absolutely right. We need fresh energy in our bilateral trade. We need to see not only in terms of quantum, but also in terms of SEPA-related issues that have come up. And I think we need to do little more work together to see how SEPA is to be scaled up. And when it is to be scaled up, we need to see if there are certain areas. And RIS had an opportunity to review this with Ambassador Sheshadri as our lead team and my colleague, Dr. Priyadarshi Dash from trade perspective, and also Pankaj Vashisht and Amit Kumar have contributed in terms of how we look at the larger issues here, both in terms of SEPA certifications of origin, the speedier clearances for vegetables and fruits, the equivalence and conformity agreements, rules of origin, MRAs, and the idea of supporting MSME that is needed. I think the Korean president has very rightly at that point in 2018 had mentioned the idea of bilateral cooperation in a substantive manner. And I think time has come for us to see how India-Korea Center for Research and Innovation Cooperation absolutely well-placed to bring in energy for MSMEs. And that, I think, would give new energy. As we see, South Korea is one which has got transformed in one generation, as Dr. Sonu Trivedi rightly mentioned, from agrarian economy, it has gone to high end. And I think India has several new dimensions to be added with consistently high agriculture growth. The state, I think, of Madhya Pradesh, which is growing almost at 18% per annum in agriculture sector, is a record. So it is important that Korea should look at subnational cooperation with specific states where technologies are needed for agrarian transformation. And central government, the government of India, has also encouraged partner countries to go subnational, because national policies could contribute to some extent, but land and labor are state subjects, and they are subjects at the subnational level, at the level of provinces. So it would be important to identify certain states where subnational cooperation between Korea and India is possible. Ambassador Shipriya Ranganathan is absolutely right when she said the supply chain resilience is important. It was also mentioned by Ambassador Choongjae, and I think it is important for us to see how India and South Korea can work together at the global level to see how we bring in this resilience. It is both in terms of supply of rare earth metals, but it is also in terms of supply of sea lanes. India's commitment in free, open, inclusive Indo-Pacific is a testimony to this commitment. The ocean governance with the sustainability of oceans and lives, I think they are important as part of the business model. And this, I think, takes forward India's commitment in IORA and also within the framework of South-South cooperation. So I would stop here and keenly look forward for taking this dialogue forward. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Professor Chaturvedi, for your remarks and very aptly summarizing the India's response to COVID and also focusing on the bilateral ties and the opportunities which are available between the two countries and the way forward. In fact, you have raised some very, very important points and how the digital, during the time of COVID, how the digital mode of payment and how some of the new initiatives such as fintech revolution startups and MSMEs and also the new innovative techniques that we have adopted has actually made a new mark, and I'm sure people in India and all across the world have adopted it, and they have started living in this world which has become a new normal. So with this, I now open the floor for discussion. We have some questions in chat box, but before we take that question, may I just raise one question to both the panelists? To Mr. Cho, I have a question. Mr. Cho, you've very aptly summarized the relationship, the existing commercial ties that we have. And I'm sure given the strong historical, cultural and people-to-people connection that we have between the two countries, I'm sure the commercial ties would also move forward, move forward. And you've also talked about that there's a need to upgrade the SIPA. So how do you think this entire COVID pandemic has transformed the economic relationship and how we see our trade partners, not only in terms of how we how Republic of Korea is looking at India, but also how it is looking at its other neighboring countries? Your response on this?
I can answer that question right away. Thank you. That was a very good question. So first of all, under this COVID pandemic situation and the US-China confrontation, it is still continuing. Given that situation, where India stands from the Korean perspective, how it changed, let me answer that question. So let me be very definitive. India has become more important than ever, especially under this US-China confrontation. And Korea's status has also risen dramatically. You would be aware of that. When it comes to certain fields, like semiconductor, Batel, and the COVID, anti-COVID as well. Some in digital areas as well. So the status of country of Korea and what the Korean companies can do, people are now aware of that. So under this COVID situation, we want to make it Korean, more Korean, nationalize that. So that's what we're doing. And US and China and other countries as well wants to have that supply chain inside their countries. So largely speaking, Korea's main technologies are very important for that. So many countries are trying more to foster Korean technologies and companies. That's how the Korean status went up. And again, like I mentioned, global status of India has risen as well. So world's interest is now coming from the Asia-Pacific to Indo-Pacific. That is a transition we're seeing. And the stronger the US-China confrontation is, India, who will be the G3? So the G3 status of India is also rising as well. So given that, India and China, under this global pandemic and US-China confrontation, our status, Korea and India as well, are rising more than ever. And how the Korea looks at India has also increased very much. So I heard this from Professor Chaturvedi. Now Korea and China have to strengthen our ties more. And more than that, the South ties is more important than ever with other countries as well. We are now aware of that, India and Korea as well. So in between US and China, we no longer have to decide whether it is US or China, but we have to look for our ways, our policies, our own policies to make a decision to make these ties, to do that cooperation. That is where we are now. So that is where the new Southern policy came out. And I believe India's Act East policy as well. So in the future, as time goes by, the cooperation between two companies, the need for that will be further increased as well. And I mentioned this, the SEPA upgradation, how to upgrade that, I mentioned that. And I feel very sorry for that. That dates back to 2010, the SEPA dates back to 2010, that started to be enforced. From India's point of view as well, Korea was the largest FTA partner, and Korea, from the Korean perspective, India was the largest FTA partner. But like I mentioned, the SEPA's effect was not that much from my point of view, as from my studies. It's been already 10 years, Korea-India SEPA. What FTA? Think about what FTA is. Lowering the trade wall and tax wall to promote trades between the two countries. And we lowered the tax. We cannot lower it more. So we are now, there will be no more effect from the old SEPA. So that's why we need an upgradation. So there are some elements where we did not work on trade taxes. From India's perspective, 15% of all the aspects, the tax remained untouched. So these are the fields that we need upgradation. We need to upgrade the SEPA to these fields as well. So this is not only good from Korean export point of view, we can also import more from India. So that's why we have to touch these taxes. I saw that from Professor Chaturvedi's slides, and Her Excellency Ranganathan also mentioned this. Mangoes. I know how delicious Indian mangoes are. I know that. But mango is now a sensitive item, but we still have 50% taxed. So compared to Thailand, Philippines, and Chile, these mangoes are cheaper than Indian mangoes. So India have to focus more on SEPA to look at India's export to Korea. Not even mangoes, and Indian beer as well. So Korean youngsters enjoy the low prices of global beers, but Indian beers are not imported because of the tax wall. And one more thing I want to mention is Korea was also like this in the past. For a rapid economic growth, we have to import middle goods. So not even for Korea, even for China, India have a large trade deficit from China, and to lower that trade deficit is to upgrade SEPA with Korea to lower the tax wall and to rely more on Korean imports. That is another way to lower the trade deficit with China from India's perspective. So upgrading the SEPA is good for both countries, and even more for India's economic development. So like Hyundai Motors, LG, and Samsung Electronics can import from many countries and exporting to all over the world. So that is contributing to India as well. So again, we need to upgrade the SEPA as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cho. Before I move forward, in fact, may I now request our ambassador to make an intervention?
Thank you so much, Sonu. I know I'm taking time from many of the other participants who must be full of questions, but I have been so, stimulated by this conversation that I had to come in. One, Ambassador Cho, I must say that I have to sit with you separately and discuss SEPA issues with you. It is exceedingly complicated, and I have so many more, angles that I would love to discuss further with you. So I think I'm going to park that conversation because it's far too complicated for us to do it in the little time that we have today. I just wanted to flag 2 points which I hoped would be an area where both Dr. Chaturvedi and you can perhaps reflect a little more for the benefit of all of us here today. One is, Master Cho, you mentioned about the aspect of FDI and how this is an area where, for example, Korean FDI into the US has been increasing substantially over the past few years. I just did a very quick check on the data, and I find that US FDI into India and the US FDI into ROK are about on par. It's about roughly $40 billion. I'm not very sure of what is the quantum of inflow of FDI from ROK into the US, but I imagine it would be also around those same lines. Now, this is an area where I think that we are not competitors. I don't think that companies that are investing in the US would necessarily find the same kind of milieu and the same kind of advantages of investing in India. So I guess it would be more complementary than competitive. So is there really an area in which, given the kind of close relationship that India and the US have, India and the ROK have, and ROK and the US have, is there any way in which we can really, do a little bit of plug and play so that we're able to leverage our connections and enable Korean companies to, do 2-stage or 3-stage kind of investment? That was my first question, and I would like both of you to please give us your thoughts on that. The second is, and this unfortunately also plays into the whole SEPA angle, but Dr. Chaturvedi, you mentioned about the trade facilitation as being a critical element of SEPA implementation. And I think this is really what I have been perceiving so very strongly in all this time, that I think the lines that have been covered by SEPA already are very meaningful. One, unfortunately, in India, there is little awareness of what has been conceded. So I think that is a project that we have to do in India. And on that, I will also talk to our friends in RIS as well as in Department of Commerce. In fact, we are already working on this. And how do we make Indian exporters and importers aware of what is possible under the SEPA? The other aspect, and this is what has been brought out, is all these elements of trade facilitation. I think these could really be very impactful if we can figure out exactly what is it that the traders need in order to be able to make use of these advantages in each other's markets. So in a way, what I'm asking for from both of you is ways to translate these list of trade facilitation measures into something which both the Indian and the Korean systems will understand. So, we can then try and pull these out as separate small understandings or small, even exchange of letters so that we can wrap up these issues and get them out of the way. And I think that will really have a huge impact in terms of utility of SEPA to traders on both sides. And lastly, and this was flagged very, very briefly, I think by Dr. Chaturvedi, startups. This is really an area which we will be exploring, of course, in far more detail at a later session of our workshop. But I see so much of enthusiasm and energy in both sides, both in India and in Korea. The kind of response that we've been getting for pitching events that we've been organizing in partnership with Korean and Indian agencies has been phenomenal. So here again, if there can be a little bit more of insight from both of you on what is it that Indian and Korean startups could mean for each other, that would be most valuable. So once again, sorry for taking so much of time, but I thought that I should put these thoughts onto the table. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Professor Chaturvedi, you can respond.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Sonu Trivedi. Thanks, Ambassador Ranganathan, for your very forceful, very articulative, and very useful intervention. I think Ambassador Cho has already highlighted a couple of very important points. I see Falguni's observations in the Q&A box, and also by Manika Garg. So I think they all are trying to capture a couple of issues which I have shortlisted for myself, and I think it would be good to capture them. India-Korea Connect, I think within the sort of ambit of the US, I'm glad Ambassador Cho alluded to that. As Ambassador Ranganathan rightly sort of re-emphasized, India, US, and Korea, they are really complementing each other. And I think if we have to bring in greater order in the Asian settings and also see the third markets, it would be good if we see the parts and components analysis that Ambassador Cho is needed for complementarities between the three markets. India has recently launched a very important initiative with Australia and France to have this triangular cooperation. Unfortunately, the technological dominance within which China is operating will require many actors to come together to see how things are going forward. We had expected Japan to play that role. They did try, but it was very marginal. And I think South Korea can scale it up and create new mini multilaterals to come up. And South Korea's leadership, they would be extremely important to take all of us forward. what has happened in RCEP is not hidden from us. We know how things have gone. So it would be important for US, South Korea, and India to come together on trade investment and maybe on selected sectors for cooperation to salvage out countries. And I'm sure there are several of the ASEAN countries which are very keen for these kind of partnerships to come up to avoid dominance. And there are countries in the African region with which I have been personally working who are equally interested. Yesterday, we were with the Vietnamese mission, and I was talking to quite a few people with the National Day of Vietnam being celebrated yesterday. We all were exploring opportunities of how Vietnam can play that role. And I think South Korea's leadership in that sense would be important. The days when Ambassador Ranganathan was with our Ministry of Commerce and Industries, we were talking about services. And the servicification of our manufacturing is another new dimension that has come up between India and South Korea. I think we need to see that when we scale up our understanding on trade, the servicification of manufacturing is going to go forward in a major way. And that's how I look at even the agriculture production. You captured the point on mango, but even in soybean, in my own state of Madhya Pradesh, where soybean is being sort of captured, I was talking to our industry secretary, Rajesh Shukla, in terms of what value additions are possible and how subnational entities can actually play an important role where these partnerships matter. So if South Korea can really think of some states, as I mentioned about export of soybean from Madhya Pradesh to South Korea, I think the potential is immense, and so is the scope for Ambassador Cho for technology addition, for food processing, and what Thailand has accomplished with Thaksin Shinawatра's efforts of one district, one product. Almost all districts in India now, as called upon by Prime Minister Modi, have identified their products. And some of them are brilliant millets that are good source and alternative for rice. And these millets are in need of processing technologies, packaging technologies, which self-help groups of several women are producing. So I think it is important for us to see how what Thailand did with food processing technology, how that revolution can be partnered with South Korea at that subnational level. And that would help achieve the investments that we need. And I'm not talking about billions of dollars. These are just few millions, not even more than 100, much less than that. So how that small capital that can give good return to South Korean investors be established? And with a dynamic ambassador like Ambassador Ranganathan, we can connect several of these districts with small and medium enterprises. We can really trigger in a major social revolution by bringing these actors together and do away with the standard path of trade-oriented agreements. Time has come, and as China and EU's partnership very clearly shows, Ambassador Cho, time has come to change the game, and we need not focus on trade. We need to focus on investment. It is investment that can lead to trade and not trade leading to investment. So this game changer is required. India and South Korea no more need an impetus on trade because several things are coming up. India is going through a huge mega development revolution. Thanks to Prime Minister Modi, we have emphasized on connectivity across our districts, across our villages, and across various blocks across the districts. So India is going through a mega domestic development revolution. The digital connectivity, the physical connectivity, the connectivity of industries is multiplying. And I'm myself, as Vice Chairman of the Planning Commission of a central state in India, I'm myself witnessing that. I'm meeting hundreds of people there and trying to see on ground how this development is unleashing. It is important for South Korea to explore these new opportunities, which are to have dividends based on investment. And I can tell you, no investment fund would give you as much return as investment in these small enterprises would do. We need to, of course, create vehicles, and our system would definitely strengthen that. But a new model for development and partnership is needed. India is at the cusp of this huge transformation of rural development. And unlike China, our rural enterprises require a mega, vibrant, and dynamic connect with industries, and new investment policies, new policies for FPIs. They are so liberal and so generous that it is easily possible for you to have all the land and trade facilitation acquisitions done from the state government itself. So we need to change the game. We need to focus on investment and partnership, product development and technology. Trade would certainly focus, because South Korea has also reached at a point where imports are more or less stabilized. India's case, more of domestic production is happening. We can together address the third market and India's own market. And that, I think, would bring in the mega revolution that we need. I see the point that was made by Falguni on clean energy and on MSME. I think I have tried to address both. On energy, Mr. Chaw already mentioned about how this transformation is happening. I think the commitments for India when it comes to Paris, we are very much on track. We are likely to actually bring in the necessary transformation through solar in a major way. So, Dr. Trivedi, I would stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Chaturvedi, for taking all these questions and responding to them. May I now request Mr. Cho if you would like to respond to some of the questions?
Yes, I'll try to answer the questions raised at the chatting box. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Among the questions raised within the chatting box, not only that, but let me try to mention regarding the intervention made by the ambassador as well as Professor Chaturvedi. This is great. I mean, having this kind of debate or discussion, this is great. I feel like we are having a consensus between Korea and India. We must understand that there are a lot of areas that we can strategically cooperate and produce result. First of all, in the economic sections, trade, business are critical, and second, investment and FDI, and third, development cooperation or ODA could be the third one. Regarding ODA, as you know, 2017, there was a summit between the two leaders. We decided to collaborate, and of course, we need to speed up. But as long as we have paved the way, I believe that we can produce some result. Among these, FDI is very important. It was mentioned by Professor Sachin, Chaturvedi, as well as the ambassador. I truly agree with you. I cannot agree more, especially economic collaboration or cooperation between Korea and India, which I have observed for a long time. Without investment, trade can never occur. So we have this kind of structure between the two nations. So once again, industrial structure, there's a huge gap between Korea and India. In other words, the industrial structures or intra-industry or inter-industry wise, we need to collaborate. Especially if you look at the industry division or production division, it's not well structured. What I mean by that is, as long as there is an FDI, when I say FDI means Korea's FDI to India and India's FDI to Korea, we can complement each other. We can fill the gap between the industrial structure between these two so that we can increase the trade. Once again, India is a very important nation within Asia, right next to Japan. If you look at the GDP of India, it's about 3 trillion. That's the GDP size of India. And in case of Korea, it's about 1.6 trillion. So Korea is fourth and India is second. But still, if you look at the trade volume, is just a little above 20 billion. But look at Vietnam. The trade volume between Vietnam and Korea is above 40 billion, double the size of the trade between India and Korea. Why? Why? Very simple. Vietnam's GDP is only 1/10 of India, but still, if you look at the trade volume between Korea and Vietnam, is twice larger than that of India. It's because trade investment or FDI investment to or vice versa between Korea and Vietnam is huge. So what I'd like to emphasize is that not only trade is important, but also FDI is more important. I'd like to emphasize that. And I'd like to agree with the ambassador and professor. As I said before, ever since 2017, US and China, the trade conflict increases. And what I'm worried about is, if you look at the United States, they are very active in terms of attracting the investment in the area of semiconductor. They have declared all kinds of policies to develop the semiconductor industries and attracting a lot of Korean companies. If you look at large conglomerates in Korea, they are not investing to other countries but to the United States because of the great incentive policies taken by the US administration. These are the challenges that we are faced with. So once again, this could be regarded as one of the greatest obstacle or challenge that India and Korea has faced with. We need to double up our efforts to increase the FDI. And India, let me dare to say that India needs to make greater efforts so that you can attract more Korean conglomerates as well as Korean other companies. And by doing that, we can also boost the startup business between the two countries. Once again, startup business can be enhanced only when there is a FDI between the two countries. So more concrete or more detailed plans needs to be mapped out so that the bilateral between India and Korea can increase the FDI between the two countries. As Dr. Trivedi mentioned, of course, the government-to-government collaboration is important, but also, as Professor mentioned, subnational level of cooperation is extremely important. We need that urgently. We need to find a way how we can increase the subnational collaboration.
Thank you, Mr. Cho, for your responses. May I also raise a question? Maybe it is just like a comment. Recently, we had a symposium where I think Professor Chaturvedi, you were a panelist in that, where we had discussed about the developmental models in Korea and how it could be replicated, or some lessons could be learned in the region of Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh. So it is just related to that. If maybe Mr. Cho could respond, or Professor Chaturvedi, like we know that Korean chaebols are already making their mark in India, but how to take them to remote and rural areas? Professor Chaturvedi, you have talked about the mega domestic digital revolution taking place. We have this Atmanirbhar Bharat. Already this concept has made a wide impact. So how do you think these Korean chaebols can reach up to the grassroots level?
So thanks, Dr. Trivedi. I think, as I was saying, if mission can really make an effort with some of the state governments, because in cooperative federalism, Prime Minister Modi has given a huge development space to states. And each state has been asked to attract foreign direct investment, be that Ladakh or Jammu and Kashmir or any other state. They have been asked to do, in fact, Niti Aayog has been asked to do the ranking of states based on knowledge, based on policy initiatives, and also, as I mentioned, one district, one product. This requires a statewide partnership of chaebols. And I think some of the bigger ones can really do wonders in terms of art and culture, like Gondwana paintings, the paintings that are coming out from regions like Jhabua or Bastar. They are really doing fantastic in terms of, but that has been a tribal art which is hidden some way and doesn't come out in the huge spectrum that India has with diversity and plurality. So we can partner with those companies. It would be a win-win partnership. As I said, investment is more important. And once you have these products finalized and coming in, it would have a huge health impact because unfortunately we have made our food and nutrition basket so narrow that we are really not having access to millets, which have been so nutritious and have scope for creating. So except couscous, we hardly find any other alternative at global level when it comes to millets. But if you have kodo or kutki or other alternative millets from different states, where market and access and processing has been something that they are looking forward to, probably we would have opportunity of bridging this gap, Dr. Trivedi.
Mr. Cho, would you like to respond? I had raised this issue of how to take the Korean chaebols up to the remotest area of India.
That was a very important point. India is a very big country, huge country. Of course, Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, Shanghai, we have big city, big parts. Bangalore, we talk about the 6th largest city, 7 large cities, but we have to expand this to every part of India. So from a foreign investor point of view, so these remote areas, from investment point of view, from FDI point of view, the most important thing is infrastructure. And that is also a barrier as well. And we cannot establish infrastructure in every part of the India. That's impossible. So if we have to focus on certain plans to make investments to develop infrastructure in certain areas, and then we have to come up with cities. We can build cities, manufacturing parks, smart cities related to that. So that is what we need right now. Near Delhi, we have Nimna Park. It's a Japanese park, and I see that park is very successful. So Indian government and some related to Korean government and other governments in India, when related, we can come up with developing and attracting investments to all parts of India. So this is what the regional governments have to focus. And like I mentioned, the 10 billion financial package from years ago. So we can utilize that, for example, to make an industrial park, manufacturing park only for Korea. So maybe that's the Indian government and regional governments have to focus on. That's what I think.
Thank you, Mr. Cho, and I'm sure we all agree with the point with what both the speakers have raised, that we need to have a tie-up with the regional governments, in fact, and that is how we could reach down to the masses. There are some questions in the chat box. I think it has also been taken up, but I'm just raising some of them. Probably, I think Professor Chaturvedi, you have already answered the question related to MSMEs and about clean energy, which Falguni has raised. There's a question which talks about in what aspects can there be upgradation in SEPA in the post-COVID world. I'm just trying to club some of them. The other question is related to prospects of growth in healthcare sector. And the last one is related to the language issue. How language is a barrier, and basically language is a barrier between the two countries, and how it could be used for promoting the commercial ties between the two countries. So maybe both the speakers could respond to it.
So is language a barrier? Yes, it might be, yes. I'm talking in Korean and you're talking English, yes, of course. This is a kind of barrier, but I don't know. Because I'm using Zoom and we have simultaneous interpretation, and this is something new. So rather than the language barrier, we have to think about how well we understand each other, how well we recognize that we need each other. So that is something that we really have to focus on. So that is something important to business, maybe more important than the business as well. We have Kotra in Korea and many SME supporting system in Korea. So if you utilize these systems in Korea, so you have many supports on many languages. So that's how to close this gap. And of course, that is there's a strong force to use many languages, more than China. So we use many languages. So, and I've read many things about that. So again, language would not be a big problem. That's what I think.
I fully agree, Ambassador Cho. I think language is not a trouble or impediment. I think we need to get together, as you rightly said. Technology is the solution, and with technology, we can really collectively go forward. We can make it a better world with technology. Plurality and vibrancy, it's there all across. Even in India, we don't have one language. It's multiple languages and multiple dialects. So plurality is vibrancy.
Thank you, Professor Chaturvedi. In fact, we are almost reaching our time limit, and maybe we can just wind off the proceedings for today. It's been a very interactive session. Many questions have come up, and both our experts have raised some of the very important issues, focusing right from the evolution of India, Republic of Korea commercial ties to the challenges that were posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, and how these challenges have been transformed into opportunities. Some new areas have also been identified: cooperation in startup, MSMEs, and how we can take the business ties between the two countries up to the grassroots level. Some very important points have come up, and I'm sure these would be a learning experience for all our participants who have joined here today. And maybe we will think over it, and also some of the suggestions that we have got from this session would be also taken up at the B2B level, and also at the G2G level, for deepening the business and commercial ties between the two countries. Certainly, yes, the points that have come up, I'm sure our ambassador is also here, would be also taken up when we talk about further strengthening and upgrading our CIPA. These points would certainly be taken into consideration. So many thanks once again to both our speakers, Mr. Cho and Professor Chaturvedi, for your participation and for your special address, and also being so generous with the times, and also responding to all the questions which we had. Many thanks also to all the live participants for raising your questions, and also being a part of this day 2 of our workshop. In the end, let me formally thank RIS and KIEP for their institutional partnership, and I'm sure together we'll be able to take this partnership further. And finally, thanks to our ambassador, Sri Priya Ranganathan, ma'am, for your encouragement, support, and also for being there, for being here throughout in this session, and also for conceptualizing this entire idea. And I'm sure this all the 9 days brainstorming session that we have for the 2 weeks would certainly bring out some very, very important issues that would guide the future of relationship between the two countries of India and Republic of Korea. With this, we end the session formally, and we will again meet on Monday to discuss more about the changing socioeconomic landscape of India and Republic of Korea. So I request all the participants to join us back again on Monday for the session 3 of this very, very important workshop that we are doing, focusing on different aspects of relationship between the two countries. So thank you all.